Sinisterism is about finding the primal aspects of the left-hand path, primal in history, primal in the psyche, thus obtaining truth. Thomas Leroy.
Greetings, my friends, and welcome back to your dose of sinister heathenry. But for those new to the channel, I'm Thomas Leroy, founder of the International Left-Hand Path organization, the Sect of the Horn God. The sect is an educational foundation created to not only make those with the black flame aware of its glow, but to also restore the shadow aspects to the ancient gods by going deep into the past, not only historically, but also psychologically. For the primordial depths of the psyche are limitless. So, if this sounds interesting, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to learn more, join the organization, the Sect of the Horn God, at the link down below. Thank you. Greetings, my friends. Okay, so over the last couple of videos, we've been discussing the Aeonic currents, if you will. And that question of what comes after the Christ current. Okay? Now, because I've been obsessed with this question, I went on a deep, very, very deep dive. And I may have come up with an answer. Okay, to get into this, we have to go to Carl Jung and his book, Aeon. A mindfuck of a book. Aeon, Aeon, they all basically mean the same thing, a great span of time. I'll use Aeon when connected to Jung, and Aeon when referring to occultic matters, just to avoid confusion, if you will. An Aeon, also known as the Platonic month, is roughly 2,000 years, and it's dominated by an astrological sign. And for the last 2,000 years, that's been Pisces. Now, whether you believe in astrology or not, that's immaterial. The constellations, though, they do exist, okay? And they have a profound effect on ancient cultures from around the world, triggering something deep in the subconscious of those who gaze upon them. You know what I mean? This whole horoscope thing, I'm not a fan. To me, this idea of those stars in a certain formation triggering something in the subconscious, that's the real magic. Now, the location of the sun of the sky at the spring equinox is called the vernal equinox point. And going back in time, the vernal equinox point moved in front of the constellation of Pisces on 1 AD. Okay? Question. Who's said to have been born on 1 AD? But wait. Before Pisces, there was the Aeon of Aries, a god of war, an age of what Nietzsche would call master morality. This was a period when both Greek and Roman cultures were founded. An age based upon Greek rationalism and And if you think about it, this is the antithesis of the blind faith that would come in the next Aeon. Also, Aries is symbolized by the ram, and thus you have a connection to the horn god. You could say that this Platonic month was a satanic age, or Aeon. Now, getting back to Pisces, beginning at the start of the Aeon of Pisces, Christ was born. The Aeon of the Christ symbol, the fish. We've seen those symbols on the back of cars, right? Where they came from is the early Christians adopted the fish symbol from a Greek anagram for Christ. But Pisces is symbolized by two fish. Okay, so now I want you to look at this diagram. This is a reproduction of a diagram originally created by Jung. Okay, look at the top circle. It says anthropos, which translates from Greek as the Son of Man, which is Christ. And between that top circle and the next one down, you have the first 1,000 years of the age of Pisces. At the second circle, it says homo, or man, and thus begins the second 1,000 years, the age of the Antichrist, the second fish in the Aeon of Pisces. So, for the first 1,000 years, you had the ascension of the Christ current, and for the next 1,000 years after that, the dissension. If you look at it from a historical perspective, the Christ current peaked in the Middle Ages and has been on the decline ever since. Now, what constellation dominates the next Platonic month? Aquarius. This means the Aeon of Aquarius is said to begin when the vernal equinox point moves from in front of the constellation of Pisces to in front of the constellation Aquarius. Now, some astrologers say the age of Aquarius actually began in 2012, while others say it was 2020. And still others say it won't begin for another 600 years. But for the sake of argument, we'll say it's already begun. All right, so let's go back to the diagram. You go down to the middle circle. What does it say? If you can't read it, it says serpens, a Gnostic reference to serpent. So, with the Aeon of Aquarius, you have water and serpent. Water and serpent. Greetings, friends. As stated in my last video, the times are changing. We're experiencing a great Aeonic shift, one brought about with the death of God, thus opening the way for something else. Because just as nature abhors a vacuum, so too does the collective unconscious. And that void is being filled quickly. So what I want to do in this video is go a bit more in depth concerning my Leviathan hypothesis and why I feel it's the appropriate mask for the adversarial current, if you will, a mask for the new Aeon. Now, I think most of us on the path already know who or what Leviathan is, the sea serpent known as one of the 7 princes of hell, and one of the 4 princes of the demons, according to the Book of Abramelin. So as a demonic entity, Leviathan is well known within the dark occultic community. But there are deeper aspects to this beast of the primordial chaos. Much deeper. To begin with, getting to the rudimentary aspects of it all, this innate fear of serpents and snakes is deeply embedded in the human psyche. It goes back millions of years to our most ancient primate ancestors who, while living in the canopies of equatorial rainforests, would have to be on a constant lookout for those predators that also dwelt in the trees, namely snakes. This fear was thus imprinted within the collective unconscious, according to Jungian theory. It's ingrained in the psyche at such a deep primal level, many have to unlearn this fear to even go near a snake. Thus, the serpent came to symbolize that which dwells within the chaotic realm of fear, or the primordial chaos. So it's obvious to see why the serpent is such a ready villain to be utilized in a myriad of myths and legends. Now, the struggle between Yahweh and Leviathan is, observing it from a symbolic or mythological perspective, is comparable to the struggle between the Sky Father and the chthonic deities. You can see that struggle in various mythologies, Slavic for example, also in Tengranism, and in the common Christian interpretation of God versus Satan. But the difference here, though, is Leviathan is not on or under the ground, but in the primordial chaos. And this brings us to what is referred to as Chaos Kampf. Now, what's Chaos Kampf, you may ask? It's the struggle between order and chaos, symbolized in the battles between a storm god and some sort of great serpent. This is a common trope in comparative mythology, and it appears that the origins of the Chaos Kampf myth lie within the traditions of the Proto-Indo-Europeans. For those who don't know, the Proto-Indo-Europeans were those who domesticated the horse and invented the chariot. They were believed to be a warlike people who spread their influence across the Eurasian landmass starting roughly 6,000 years ago. We believe this because of the commonality in languages and myths from India to Ireland. And one of those is the Chaos Kampf mythological traditions. Indo-European examples of this mythic tradition include Marduk versus Tiamat, Zeus versus Typhon, Indra versus Vritra, and Thor versus Jormungandr, to name but a few. So, sea serpents represent that which is primordial or pre-creation, that which can be taught. In mythological terms, being that upon which the cosmos is established. This is interesting, because ancient peoples viewed the seas as chaotic and dangerous, and were at the world's edge or the periphery of the cosmos. What was below the waves, what was in the depths, symbolized innate primordial knowledge. Thus we have the polar opposite of the ordered center of existence, the creations of the Sky Father. This is the equivalent of Nietzsche's Dionysian-Apollonian dialectic. Hence, the depths symbolize the source of primal gnosis, that which cannot be learned, but instead revealed. To put it simply, this is knowledge from deep in your psyche. And because that which arises from the abyss is portrayed as monstrous serpents, this suggests their nature is antithetical to the more benevolent anthropomorphic deities. You see, chaos in order. This theme is evident in Christian mythology, where Leviathan is synonymous with the hellmouth, which leads into the abyss. Now, to further this hypothesis, according to Jung, serpents also represent how consciousness intertwines with unconsciousness. And what we're doing on this path, on the left-hand path, is, whether you realize it or not, entwining our conscious with the subconscious. But we're doing it on our own terms, without the guidance of the Sky Father. See where I'm going with this? Even the Celtic Druids believed serpents had primordial knowledge. They believe this knowledge was obtained during the winter hibernation months, when the snakes visited the subterranean realms to connect with the gods of the underworld, not to return again until spring. This is a symbolic representation of what Jung was talking about, going down into the subconscious and returning with answers, which wouldn't be unlike a shaman who delves into the underworld to commune with the spirits in order to bring back knowledge. And if you know anything about the Abrahamic traditions, the serpent also represents the evil adversary, because it's a source of wisdom and temptation, personal wisdom, not that which can be bestowed upon one from on high, from the Sky Father. Something deeper than that which can be learned. For most of human history, we were illiterate. Some of you might be thinking that shit hasn't changed much, but you know what I'm trying to say. Myths and legends told around the great communal fires were how we learned of the gods, thus teaching us about the outer natural world and also the inner world of ourselves. They were told in poetic rhyme and rhythm to make it easier to remember, and many of these tales are still told to this day. They became a part of us. They are a part of us, these epic tales of gods and monsters. They're reflections of what lies in the deeper reaches of the subconscious, that which is often difficult to bring forth into the conscious, into the ego mind. And symbols were all around the natural world to help trigger those tales, to help keep one in tune with the gods. These reminders could be subtle as a leaf in a stream, or as massive as the sky at night. And this brings us to the constellations, and to what's known as the signs of the zodiac. But first, I need to make a detour here and flat out state that astrology as you know it, the 12 signs of the zodiac, is nonsense. I know some of my friends out there really believe in the common horoscope, but sorry, it's bullshit. Don't try to argue with me. Don't waste your time. Because you who do believe, most of you don't even know how it's supposed to work. You believe because most people are afraid of the unknown, and you want quick answers for that which is scary and in many cases unknowable. Now, supposedly that point where the sun rises in the morning and what constellation it rises over at the time of your birth is your sign, is your star sign or whatever. But there's a problem. There's a problem for those of you who do believe. There aren't really 12 signs, but 13. And way back at the time when the zodiac was codified, a couple of thousand years ago, since then the earth has shifted on its axis. So those, like myself, who are, quote, Libras, are really born under the sign of Virgo. And the signs don't change every month like clockwork. The universe doesn't work like that. For example, Virgo lasts for 45 days, and Scorpio lasts for only 7, and between Scorpio and Sagittarius is Ophiuchus. 13 signs. That's the real horoscope. To screw with people, when someone would ask me what my sign was, I'd say I don't believe in it because I'm a Libra, and Libras tend to be skeptical. You don't know how many people would look at me with blank eyes and nod and say, "Oh yeah, I know what you mean." But, and this is important, but it's not complete bullshit though. I'm not skeptical just for the sake of being skeptical. What I'm getting at here is the way in which you think it should work is not how it really works. Remember, most people were illiterate in the far off past. So when an individual would see a certain constellation or would bring back that myth or tale that would correspond with that image. Get what I'm saying? And this, over the millennia, has become ingrained in our psyches, a part of our genetic memory. That's the real magic of astrology. So what's this all have to do with the Leviathan hypothesis? It's about the aeons and the ions. For those who don't already know, in Aleister Crowley's Thelema, it's thought that history can be broken down in what are called aeons, these great spans of time. And these aeons correspond to a certain Egyptian god, each one of them. In prehistoric times, there was Isis. Then came the Aeon of Osiris, then Horus. You get what I'm saying. While Crowley had his aeons, though, Carl Jung had his ions, and his ions corresponded with the astrological symbols. And these ions lasted for roughly 2,000 years each. I went over this in a recent video, and I'll make sure I put a link. But back in the Greco-Roman days, that took place in the Aeon of Aries. Then 2,000 years ago, roughly 2,000 years ago, came the Aeon of Pisces, symbolized by the two fish, the first 1,000 years governed by the Christ current, the second 1,000 years, the Antichrist. Get it? The first 1,000 years, the Christ current was on the incline, and the second, a decline, thus leaving us today with the new Aeon, the Aeon of Aquarius. And now, with the dying of the Christ current, we've entered this age of nihilism. You can see it all around. To quote Elon Musk, things are getting weird, and they're getting weird fast. Now, why this collapse of the Christ current, you may ask? It gave people meaning for 2 millennia. What happened? What happened is it failed because it's a lie. The popularity of the myth of Christ is founded on the idea of the ideal man or person. Christ is what you want to aspire to be. That's the basic theme, whether the Christians want to admit it or not. It's that simple. But there's a big problem. There's a problem with this notion, and that is one can't be whole without incorporating the shadow. Carl Jung understood this. He believed that even though the figure of the Christ is a powerful symbol, this symbol, though, is no longer appropriate for this current stage of humankind. This is because for Jung, the figure of Christ is not a symbol of totality because it lacks evil and sin. It's perfection, and how can one truly identify with perfection? No one can possibly really identify with the Christ, because in this perfect state, it lacks half of what we as humans are. And what that is the shadow. And Christians have ignored the shadow for 2,000 years. This is what Satan is. He is the shadow separate from the self, the most well-known mask of the adversarial archetype in the Western world. And you can't be whole, you can't reach individuation without the shadow, without Satan. To quote Jung, no tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. Also, all religions were originally based upon the direct personal experiences of the individuals. But over the generations, they become a matter of faith, devolving into mindless rituals to be blindly repeated. Do what the flock does. Go where the flock goes. Christianity has had a nice long run, but its time is coming to an end. Some of you may argue that it's still the biggest religion on the planet, and you're right, but it's not what it once was. In the past, it permeated all aspects of daily life, of existence. Now it's just background noise. The truth is, it's on life support, and we're going to do the merciful thing and pull the plug by ushering in the Aeon of Leviathan. No more lies and half-truths. The adversarial current is flowing, a current originating from the depths of the primordial chaos. Because if we're going to do this, we might as well go down as deep and dirty as we can get. We have to allow ourselves to be devoured by the hell mouth. Some of you might be saying, you're using the word we a lot. Isn't that collectivistic? No, it's not, because this journey is a solitary one. And no governing orthodoxy is trying to dictate how this will be performed. Some of us out there may have suggestions, but this is about your personal journey into the abysmal profundity, and no one can go there with you. No one's going to be there to hold your hand. Understand that you can do it in any fashion that you see fit, that works for you, satanic, Luciferian, sinistrous, whatever works, as long as you dare to venture into the abyss, to bring forth the ultimate primal expression. And I've said it many times, the truth is in the primal. And nothing is more elemental than the waters of the primordial chaos churned up by Leviathan. It's been said that the only thing Yahweh fears is Leviathan. Why is that? For what reason would this be so? But before we answer that question, we have to understand who Yahweh and Leviathan are, or represent. Yahweh is who most here in the West call God. What does that really mean? What does God mean? The truth is that word God has little meaning and paradoxically the ultimate meaning. When you hear that word, what do you think? Invisible man in the sky who made all things, an angry father who would kill his children just to make a point, to teach them a lesson? Or is God the ultimate concept of consciousness, encompassing the all that is, for without consciousness, nothing exists? Or is God love? You hear that often, especially from hippies. Or does God represent your highest ideal, that which you strive to become both on the level of the ego and also the subconscious, the ultimate self? This is what that anthropomorphism, the Christ, is. He is the representation of the ultimate self in the flesh, thus making it simpler for the average person to understand that idea. The idea of the self with a capital S. Whatever your belief or opinion is concerning God, any and all representations of God fear but one thing: Now, the manifestation of Leviathan I'm referring to is not quite the same as the demon. Not really. I'm speaking of something greater, more universal, more primal. For example, the struggle between Yahweh and Leviathan symbolically represents a struggle between the Sky Father and the chthonic deities, which is common within Indo-European mythology and can be found in Norse, Babylonian, and Hindu traditions, which is, simply put, the struggle between order and chaos presented mythologically. And in Christian mythology, as the serpent of the abysmal waters, Leviathan threatens to flood the world and swallow all of God's creation. He is not only the serpent out of the abyss, but the manifestation of the abyss, that which is most primordial. Let me repeat that. He is that which is most primordial. That right there might be the most important idea to remember. He is the deepest aspects of the primal psyche, the dark absolute personified. Just as within Hindu traditions, Brahman is the concept of consciousness, thus all other gods are aspects of Brahman, Leviathan is the concept of the abyss brought to form. Do you get what I'm saying? I'm not presenting this because I have some bias for mythological sea serpents. Truth be told, I'm the founder of an international left-hand path organization called the Sect of the Horn God. So I think it's obvious which way my biases lean when referring to representational deities. And this brings us to the Jungian Aeons or Ions. I've done videos on this before in the recent past where I explained how the cosmic order appears to correspond with 2,000-year-long sociological currents. For example, there was the Aeon of Aries, the ram, an Aeon of Nietzschean master morality in which Greek and Roman cultures rose. Then, roughly 2,000 years ago, came Pisces, the twin fish, the first fish symbolizing the first 1,000-year rise of the Christ current, the second fish, the 1,000 years of the Antichrist. And I've hypothesized that the next Aeon, that of Aquarius, this current Aeon, is the Aeon or Aeon of Leviathan. See my video on that topic for more details. But this hypothesis has been met with a measure of derision from some friends and colleagues. Look, I didn't choose Leviathan because I want it to be true. I'm just following some of the clues. Now, truth be told, I don't fully comprehend the connection between the collective unconscious and the cosmic realm. Could it be that all of reality is thought? All is mind, that consciousness and the universe are one? And that the universal psychological currents are thus synchronized with the cosmos, more so than the cosmos dictating the currents? I don't know. I do know this, though. There has been a sudden shift in the structure of reality, and don't tell me you haven't felt it. The worm has turned within the collective unconscious. But I digress. Now, getting back to the point, the main point of this video, the abyss, as in Christian theology and some aspects of psychology, is a symbolic representation of hell, destruction, and death. But for Nietzsche, it represented the ultimate depths of psychological complexity. Therefore, it could be a place of danger where we struggle to confront the darkest parts of ourselves, the Jungian shadow, also called the personal demon. However, Nietzsche also saw it as a place for growth and transformation. And from the Jungian psychological perspective, for the self to come about, one needs to assimilate the primordial psyche. That is, Leviathan needs to be assimilated at the time of the conscious realization of the self. Do you understand what I'm saying? Jung believed that the self is the unification of the conscious and the unconscious. And what he means by that is all aspects of conscious and unconscious, light and dark. For the past 2,000 years, though, the emphasis has been on the light, thus leading to a stark imbalance. But when you have come to the full realization of the self, we are then talking about that which is synonymous with self-deification or sinister illumination. This isn't simply saying, I'm my own God because I no longer believe in God. Because, trust me, many of you atheists still abide by the ethics of Christian slave morality. I see you. It's about letting go of all those values and coming to the unquestioning realization that there is no God above you and that you shouldn't believe you're your own God, but you should know you're your own God. And if you are truly your own God, then what need have you for that God outside of you? Thus Yahweh becomes a victim of obsolescence. That's why he fears Leviathan.